Hello and welcome to another edition of the Red Blood Morning Bulletin. My name is Amy Gates, and today I'm joined by my fellow Liverpool.com colleague Dave Comerford. And Dave, obviously, we're one day out from the big final, and we kind of know who we think will generally start for Liverpool in Paris tomorrow evening. You go through the team, and you can pretty much guess who will play and who won't. But I think one area where there is a little bit of doubt is who will partner Virgil van Dijk in centre defence. Either Joel Matip or Ibrahima Konate. And obviously throughout the season, Jurgen Klopp has kind of alternated between the two, depending on and specifically more in the second half of the season. Klopp has alternated more between the two than say in the first half of the season, where it was always Matip and Van Dijk. So going into tomorrow night's game, how do you think it will go? Do you think Klopp will prefer Matip and stick with him, or do you think Kanate will get the nod, considering how things have been over the last couple of months? So, what is your feel of the situation?
I mean, my expectation is that Kanate is going to start. I think the debate that we're having, and that's being had quite widely at the moment, seems to be who should start as opposed to who will. Because I think based on precedent, it looks a lot like it'll be Kanate. To be fair, because I think he's played most of the big Champions League games, and not only that, he's come in for quite a few big Premier League matches as well. Started against Tottenham both times, but obviously the second time it was kind of on merit. He started against Manchester United away. He started against Chelsea away. So I think Klopp trusts him in these big games, and with good reason for the most part. So I think that was his plan. Maybe there's an element of, off the back of a mistake that he made against Wolves, where obviously he let the ball kind of go over his head. He misjudged the flight of it early on, and then they score. Maybe that's what kind of led to the debate, because I do sort of wonder if he produced the kind of rock solid performance he did, let's say, in the final or against Southampton, relatively recently as well, whether this debate would be as prominent. I think it's the fact that, he has made that mistake that's made people a little bit concerned. Obviously, he's still a very young player. And is it like, do you go with maybe the player who's perceived to be more of a safe pair of hands in Matip? So I think the debate probably does owe itself to that quite a bit, but I don't imagine Klopp will deviate from what I think is his plan, and I expect Konate to play.
A very bold decision there, Dave.
Yeah.
I mean, it is a tricky one. It's also too when you think how much Liverpool struggled last season at centre back. Where you had Jordan Henderson and Fabinho filling in, obviously because of the spate of injuries, and now it's got to the point where we're sitting here a year later on the eve of a Champions League final, debating whether who Klopp will choose between Konate and Matip. I think it's shown how much things have changed in a year for Liverpool at centre back. And Jurgen Klopp now has kind of a wealth of options, and that's even to say like Joe Gomez, who can hardly get a kick of a ball at centre back these days. It shows you how the fortunes of the club have changed just within a year.
Yeah, it does. Obviously, Phillips and Williams, in addition to obviously midfielders, Ozan Kabak as well. These were the players that really got us into this position in that sort of run in towards the end of last season. So it has changed a lot, and it's interesting. Like, obviously, we spoke about all these centre back partnerships last season. I think it was about 20 in the end. To be fair, this season, even with the injury crisis abating, like, we've still actually rotated a fair bit there. Obviously, this time it's been kind of planned, managed rotation. But I think what's really interesting, and maybe something that people haven't fully appreciated, is, based on what you're saying there, Liverpool have managed, and I'm probably going to curse them into a horrific training ground accident by saying this, but Liverpool have managed to keep Joel Matip fit for virtually an entire season now. So I think there's been maybe one or two games where he's had a slight complaint or maybe some illness and things like that, but there's been nothing significant at all on the injury front. And I think the club deserve credit for that, because I don't know how far back you'd have to go for Matip to have an injury-free season. Maybe there was one early in his Liverpool career, but it seems for the most part that he has sort of been blighted by injuries, and every few weeks he's breaking down. But having Konate there has surely helped in that respect to ease the burden on him and take him out the limelight. We often see him rested. If we play 3 games in a week, Matip wouldn't start all 3. I think that's really helped him and really helped Liverpool too. So, yeah, I think sort of Klopp in conjunction with the medical staff has done a really good job there, because Matip, obviously, a world-class centre-back in his own right, managed to keep him fit, and the team hasn't suffered for it because we have Konate there in reserve.
Yeah, and I think that's a very good point that you make. That club has his man management of Matip has been, excellent this year in that knowing when to rest him and when to play him. And even we saw it in the Carabao Cup early on. Joel Matip would maybe come on for one half, and then by the beginning of the second half, there'd be someone else ready to take his place. So Klopp has known when to use him and when not to use him. And obviously, it helps when you have someone like Konate coming in, who's a very good replacement. So there's no drop in quality. And yeah, I mean, I think you probably have to go back to maybe his time even at Schalke for the last time Joel Matip actually played this, accumulative amount of minutes in a season. I don't know if I think I could be wrong on this, but I think he's actually breaking his own Liverpool record in terms of minutes played throughout this season. So I personally think that Jurgen Klopp will go with Matip, just because it's more or less been him and Van Dijk throughout the whole season. And I know Konate has kind of maybe played more in the Champions League run, but I just kind of feel like maybe Matip, it's not saying he deserves to play, but I think maybe, yeah, there is an element of maybe he does deserve, because in the first half of the season, he was actually Liverpool's best defender, like more so than Van Dijk. Van Dijk has only really come back to form, I think, in the second half. And for me, I think Matip does kind of deserve to get the nod. And I mean, if things aren't working out, you can always change it with Konate. But yeah, for me, I think Matip will be the one. But you're going Konate?
Yeah, I mean, that's my expectation. And like, it's one of those things where, the key point to stress it in this whole debate is that, both of them are top draw defenders. There's very little to separate them. And I think, no one's going to be really worried either way if they see, either player on the team sheet. I think that there are good tactical arguments to play Konate as well. I've heard people talk about set pieces. I think Konate's maybe got maybe more of a presence in that respect. I don't think that's a huge thing, because Matip can score from corners as well, and people have talked about kind of Real's defenders not having too much in the way of height. But I think the bigger thing for me is the speed in that right channel, because we're going to see Trent obviously getting forward to support the attack. Maybe not to the same extent as usual. Liverpool are a little bit more cautious in this game, but it will obviously still be a feature of our game plan. And that's going to lead to obviously Vinicius. There will be moments, we see this all the time. Liverpool are placed in kind of situations where the left's kind of 2 against 2, 3 against 3 at the back because of their system. So there are going to be those kind of moments where Vinicius is running into that channel. And I feel that if he's greeted by Konate as opposed to Matip, I think Konate might be slightly better equipped to deal with him in terms of the burst of pace that he can have. And I'm not saying Matip's slow. I think sometimes when we talk about the physical differences between these two players, we make it seem like Matip is quite weak and slow. He isn't. But, in Vinicius, we're talking about someone who's particularly rapid. So I think that's an argument for it. And I also think, Konate has, to my mind, he's made like 2 mistakes stand out in my head. Maybe there's 1 or 2 that I'm missing, but there was the one against Wolves, which I mentioned, and then there was, I think, the missed clearance from the cross against Benfica. And obviously they're both, pretty basic errors. But I actually think for the most part that when he's played in big games, he's actually really stepped up to the occasion and produced performances kind of befitting of those matches. And it's been one of the most impressive things actually from him this season. And Matip has made fewer mistakes that have led to shots or goals, I think, or certainly fewer high-profile mistakes. But there was a spell there in the winter where he was, really sloppy, especially in possession. So he's not necessarily bulletproof either. So yeah, I can 100% see the rationale behind Konate, even though I also understand that Matip is kind of the more maybe trusted player among the fan base.
Yeah, and I think you can weigh up the pros and the cons for both. For selecting either player. Obviously you say Kanate is probably more physical, maybe more dynamic. The Matip maybe is better tactical sense. Maybe at this point, obviously he's more experienced. So yeah, I mean it is a difficult one, and it's interesting to see who Klopp will eventually decide to select for the final. But either way, I think we're both in agreement here that we both hope whoever he picks has a very good game. Either way,
Yeah. Well, obviously, last time we were in the final, I think I'm right in saying it was Van Dijk alongside Lovren. So we should maybe count our blessings that it's a bit of an upgrade this time in terms of his partner.
yeah, Liverpool are spoiled for choice now.
Yeah.
But yeah, that'll do us for today's edition of the Blood Red podcast. Thank you, Dave, for joining, and be make sure to check all the content on Blood Red and Liverpool.com throughout the day. And thanks for tuning in.